If one were attempting to concisely and accurately describe BMW's recent strategic approach by utilizing a movie metaphor, I would go ahead and say this. Jennifer Lopez in her role as a fashion woman who somehow has a lot of money. She goes on vacation on an island. There she meets a rather inconspicuous, unworthy guy to her who owns a small bookstore. And you're like, that somehow doesn't fit. It's Jennifer Lopez and all. But then it turns out the guy doesn't just have the bookstore. He and his family own the whole island. And suddenly it's totally awesome and a surprise. And yes, then he takes off his t-shirt, even has a six-pack. Absolutely awesome. And that's exactly how BMW, in my eyes, ultimately does it with the BMW i7, BMW M2. I mean, when these particular vehicles were shown, I just found myself thinking, how in the world can anyone make cars this incredibly, utterly ugly? So the i7 like a piece of butter, cut vertically with a knife. The M2, what's with these trunks and monocles on the back? How can one M2 couch disgrace? And today I'm looking at both cars or checking both cars out and thinking, isn't that a wicked piece? Especially the i7 in bicolor. I don't know how BMW manages to spin you around with such polarizing design every time. Well, that's how it was for me. I don't know if it's the same for you, but they're temporarily moving away from that strategy now. Because today I'm going to show you the all-new BMW Class X, which is essentially the successor to the iX3, if you will, in great detail. And here, as you can already see, yes, we also have a bit of, let's say, what you might call pathological kidneys compared to other cars. But I never found the kidneys that bad, honestly. And suddenly, the kidneys aren't as bad as the memes made them out to be back then. Yes, they are still somewhat prominent indeed. However, the rest, you've really got to admit, is gradually moving towards becoming quite classy, slightly more subdued indeed. So, as much as one can say about a BMW, this is about embracing electric mobility in a way that many out there desire, for whom sustainability is important. Less weight, less CO2. Simply making more out of less, moving away from this. Aiming for bigger, faster, often missing out on the fundamental core essence electric mobility should ideally embody. And I wouldn't have expected that from BMW at all, and of course I'm happy about it, someone who always stands on this cliff between, yes, I want a car to look naturally cool and masculine, but of course I also want that my grandchildren will still have something substantial left to inherit from this dwindling planet. And indeed, this car holds quite a few unexpected surprises, technically at the very least. And that is something I can confidently say. I hope BMW keeps their promise by the end of the day. That's what I'll tell you now in this video. And if you were already thinking about leasing a vehicle and wondering, when can I finally get my hands on this beauty? Then, if you visit Evium, for instance, and take a look at one of our attractive leasing offers in the banners, there are always those kinds of special offers available. So then you really should not commit yourself to a very long-term lease agreement, because this particular car won't take as long to arrive as you might initially think. In terms of design, when we talk about concept and such, no, it's said to be very close already. Hopefully it wasn't Pinocchio who told me that, considering how things turned out. So subscribe to the channel, that makes me very happy. Leave a thumbs up if you liked the video. And now let us all take a longer look at the newly introduced Class X. What do you all think? Welcome to Car Maniac. Just take a moment to absorb the design. I'll offer some comments because at the end of the day it is quite different from what we've seen before. You can immediately tell it's a BMW. But essentially there are many things different here, such as this glass front, and then of course those iconic kidneys we've mentioned. To me it doesn't look, well, many will comment on it with beaver again, but to me it looks quite different. Do you know those containers used for catching spiders, or should be used because they shouldn't be squashed, right? I always make a huge fuss about catching them. I mean, at home those are these glass things you put over them and then slide up a hatch so they're inside, and then you can throw them out. And when you take a closer look at the spider, because I often show them to my kids, just take a closer look at the spider. Then these two things look like those, you know them? I call them sporty spiders, these little compact powerful spiders that jump insanely fast from left to right. They also have, if you look at them up close, exactly those two things. Those are, I believe, their mandibles, or since I'm not one, I really have absolutely no clue about arachnology, if that's what you actually call it, though I assume perhaps those are mandibles. Looks absolutely awesome with this particular light outline. I'm a huge fan of lighting design anyway, because it truly can elevate something to a whole new level of elegance. This, you could say, is a bit Peugeot-like. So these two claws, Peugeot calls them claws, only now they have more than two claws, but it kind of looks like it. And other than that, it's really a suitable SUV. Many don't like SUVs, SAV, sports activity vehicle, as you see in the adverts. when the super attractive salt and pepper haired guy gets home, his car. Plugs it in at a gorgeous house with glass facade, then an even more beautiful woman comes out, followed by even more beautiful children. And they're all happy, and then they go on a trip. This family life, that's what the sports activity vehicle is all about. And I also appreciate that in this context, and now we're getting to the message of electric mobility, things like large tires, for example, haven't been overlooked. I believe, despite all this efficiency matter, we still need to maintain a bit of humanity, some car enthusiasm. Yes, that's why my name is Car Maniac, if you're wondering why I can't acknowledge that everything is just reduced to the bare minimum. Why do we need, for example, a hood like this? It's enough. I once had someone in my TV show who claimed cars should end right after the windshield here at the front. Yes, that's ugly enough to throw away. Why would you want that? It's definitely not considered a car if it lacks a hood. That was very clearly demonstrated to us. The engine was always there, now it's gone, but we can still keep it that way. And the i7 proves that it can be awesome, even though the space is obviously completely wasted. So new lighting design, the kidney grille, which I also find really, really awesome. And now, I really have to share truly, really bad news for those among you who greatly enjoy the act of stealing car badges. Because this is so imprinted, it does look pretty cool. Whether it'll come out like this, I don't know. Surely there's some German regulation that prevents this. For instance, if you run someone over, it's not just their legs that break, but possibly a sharp edge from the embossing could slice open their face. Such things exist in Germany. After all, front logos can't be illuminated, as we recently pointed out with the Polestar, which are not connected to the front headlight. And then, in terms of size, some specifications, I don't know. I think it's really awesome. It also possesses a distinctly futuristic touch, such an innovative imprint instead of a traditional logo, and not the obtrusiveness typically associated with a logo's color scheme, but just like BMW, just without any form of color, essentially. Digital rearview mirrors. And with the whole concept, I have no idea how they plan to do that. I can only say one thing, I'm very curious about it, and if my YouTube channel still exists by then, I'll definitely give it a try. The time is not far off. Just wait, I'll tell you. We're not talking about 2026, 2027 or anything like that. Don't worry, it's not like with the ID2 from Volkswagen. But the numbers are as follows. BMW is aiming for a significant 30% increase in vehicle range here, now for instance when compared directly to an iX3 model. Mathematically, and I hope I don't embarrass myself now, if you're driving the iX3 on the highway because you're not sticking to 110 behind a truck but driving adequately, and you manage to cover 300 kilometers, then here you would already achieve 390 kilometers. But here lies the essential crux, not with the ever-increasing sizes of batteries, but with making them smaller and significantly lighter batteries. Or at least a lighter car, because here too the 30% rule applies. The vehicle is now supposed to be 30% lighter compared to what its weight was before. With the batteries having a weight of around 450 kilos, it's undeniably lighter, without a doubt, for sure. It's not super light, and of course not at the level of combustion engines, but 30% lighter. An electric vehicle of this size easily weighs around 2.3 tons without trouble. The 30% reduction really helps, but we don't stop there. We're pushing further with a 35% decrease in CO2 emissions during production. That's also fantastic. BMW is already doing really well at this, and many other manufacturers too who, of course, have companies in their supply chain that are, of course, also encouraged to produce sustainably, so from green energy, recycling materials and the like. So 35% less in production and 40% less in this supply chain in the distribution network. Adopting this strategy is projected to yield an increase in positive outcomes, consequently steering us towards a substantially more favorable direction regarding the effective management and reduction of CO2 emissions. Yes, walking is of course always cleaner, but that's not what we want, and that's not something we can do either. Does this perhaps remind you a little of the iX? I'm not entirely certain. Well, what really strikes me, especially at the back, it's just that I don't know if BMW would like to hear this, but that's not an insult. Stop. When you stand there, yes, right there, I noticed earlier. When I saw my esteemed colleagues moderating here that it kind of looks like the taillight of an Audi Q7. No more, when you're all the way at the back, then it changes, because it's much longer than the taillight of an Audi Q7, but the graphic division is the same, and if you were to compress this light, then it would be just like the Q7. Yes, but as mentioned, we had one ourselves as a family car. It is, as of now, I don't find it ugly, but it does have a bit of that touch to it. What's very typical for BMW, of course, is the cat's eye on the side here and the cat's eye on the side here. It makes the car appear even wider. They haven't skimped on the diffuser here, let me step out of the frame a bit, but have really slapped something significant on there. I truly hope that is indeed the case, because BMW customers are not only those individuals who, as people often say, supposedly never ever use their turn signals, but when they turn, but are also those, I was a BMW customer myself, who simply like to have a car that looks like something special. Joy in driving should also be a delight for the eyes, I think so. Here as well, the embossing of the BMW logo at the back. So for me, the BMW design is really awesome right now. The i4 is, of course, a bit understated. Question for you, can we walk around here or should we head back in that direction? As we walk in that direction, okay, it's just like that. Yes, I don't know. The i4 is a bit too blended into the street scene and based on the combustion engine. It's just not the same here. Something I'd have to get used to, I don't know about you, is that the window line is very low. Now, some might say if you criticize Tesla for the window line, you have to do it here too. True, with Tesla, it's only here at the front with the Model 3. The window line is pulled down so far that from where my cameraman is standing in this case, you can really look the driver right in the crotch. It's somehow so annoying, and I don't like that. It also takes away a certain dynamism, bulkiness, which usually comes from a hood, which the Model 3 again doesn't have or so. Pulled down, here it's on the sides. I'm really not sure if I like it, but initially thought I'd strongly dislike the i7, then surprisingly ended up liking it quite a bit. I'd have to look at it for quite a while. We've got these wings for opening the door. And essentially that's all from a detailed design perspective that I can really tell you at this moment. Of course, I don't have the battery size. They've skimped on that again, just like with the prices, which I particularly love. You come to a world premiere, talk about the car, and then, of course, in your eyes, it can't seem like a paid promotional video because I'm telling you about things BMW is planning. But I'm not telling you about them because BMW would naturally benefit, but because I think it's a good thing. That BMW now fully embodies this particular message, and yet we see a car that simply doesn't look anything like these capsules. I have this neighbor, he owns one of those capsules too, pedals around in it, and for some reason he can even drive it on the highway. So either he's got thighs like a killer, or those things somehow manage to hit 90 despite the pedals. I mean, you know, those capsules, those round candies. Doesn't look like it. I mean, if they implement it as they've said with the 30% here and there, less weight, knock me dead, then it's going to be awesome. It becomes even better when you step inside. And now, the amusing aspect is those people who despise buttons and claim it's not contemporary enough for them are going to adore it here. Because BMW is also significantly shifting its strategy here, saying, yes, indeed, the competition is certainly not sleeping at all. I find that likable too, that they put it that way because it's not this too big to fail attitude. What do you want down there? Rather, it's like, hey, you know, we really need to see what other folks are doing. Above all, we are currently facing a significant flood of Chinese cars that are getting a lot right. Not everything, it must be said, though, understandably. So, I'm not ready to switch from a German car to a Chinese one just yet, for various reasons. Route planning, software, actual charging power, and then, of course, for many of you, there's also the political aspect behind it. But now we're moving in the direction where the Tesla camp is always at home asking, why do you need a button? I haven't had a button for 5 years now. We don't have one here either, and now we're going to take a closer look at it from the inside. Whether you'll find yourself completely amazed or not, you can always feel free to let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Section below. I truly value all the feedback that I receive from you, as it helps me continuously improve and ensure that I am delivering content that resonates well with my audience. Is the orange shade too powerful for your taste? Yes, indeed, I do truly appreciate and embrace the boldness it brings. This is velour. I think it's beautiful, but that doesn't mean it'll go into production. The concept of modern spaciousness is fascinating, akin to visions of 2025's future cars shown at the IAA event 2 decades ago, sparking curiosity about future automotive innovation and design. This is what it looks like on the inside. Completely free of everything. As I said, no buttons, just the gear selector here, and then this display with the BMW operating system 9 right in the new version. And we have got this particular parallelogram right here, which we have made quite interesting because, as you see, it's not your typical or ordinary rectangular display with 90-degree angles, but rather it's somehow arranged at an angle. I find that great too because design-wise it's quite an eye-catcher. Just like this steering wheel, you'd think you've turned it the wrong way because these spokes usually point at 3 and 9 o'clock. They don't now, so I might have to get a bit used to it. Haptic buttons, thank you very much indeed, also for the future. It appears very refined indeed, and yet I still feel precisely as though I am inside a BMW. Now, the very first point to make is we have here a kind of innovative display bar. I mean, it truly is a unique display bar that is clearly visible to every passenger. I find that quite cool because this way everyone can see the temperature and range, whatever, and then look from the back and say, well, now I need to take a pee. I don't want to say anything, but the car's going to run out anyway in 30 kilometers. Then dad has to drive to the charging station anyway, and there will be a head-up display added on top of that. You can't see that now. It's only visible to the driver. That's absolutely, truly awesome, I must honestly say. It looks quite exceptionally three-dimensional, very futuristic indeed. And this display here is quite different from before, or rather, not the display, the OLED display, but the menu structure. Lately, when I've been testing the i5, I've consistently pointed out how I find the system incredibly awesome in its depth and range of settings. But the menu is quite fragmented. I mean, all these icons are scattered everywhere. Every single time I have to stop and think carefully about where I can reset my consumption once again. Oh, under live vehicle, see? Yes, bit different now, understand? Reaction time's really nice. You also have large tiles, so you won't make any mistakes. Yes, I actually find it to be really, really exceptionally well made here. That. And then, you see there are the most crucial and significant tiles such as media, your beloved son Max, your deeply beloved Chloe, whom you definitely shouldn't add in this place here, and of course Olivier, whoever Olivier is to you. And then, for instance, you can see the weather here, Munich, 32 degrees, that's something we're only dreaming of at the moment, range 600 kilometers, calendar, and all that kind of stuff. The much funnier thing is that you can pull down the bar from the top here, and I find that pretty awesome. There are many different customization options and methods available in modern cars. For instance, at Peugeot, these unique eye toggles, which you can place down here, give you the flexibility to assign a completely separate display for your convenience. Here you assign this top display, and these logos are so large and so clearly visible and so well separated that I get the perfect overview. And you could say, for instance, I'm not a fan of it because I like continuity in my display. I don't want to change it all the time, but for people who enjoy doing that, it's pretty awesome. Because you might actually say, okay, I'm only driving on these very steep grades now. On this brief commute, just 3.7 miles, I don't need to worry about range, extra things, or air quality. I drive through the countryside, air quality is good. What I want, for example, is to blast that one song at full volume. Well, Imagine Dragons Believer played really very loud because I truly need to pump myself up significantly for today. Then you simply grab the media and just drag it upwards here to a precise spot where, for instance, you had perhaps something else I really don't know that you no longer need for this specific journey you're embarking on. Or you might say, wait, that's far too much for me, I'd rather drag it over here. On the whole left side, next to the current day and date, you can now clearly see, for example, the particular song that is currently playing, around about 38, 40, just like that. Or you might say, wow, now I really truly want to know like the weather as well, because you're aiming for a completely different profile, or perhaps want to know how exactly my car has performed on the highway in terms of fuel consumption. Then instead of the second position, you just pull up your consumption. So you can really play it nicely. I find that truly cool. And right here, we have got two completely distinct grids, one that is explicitly for personnel. Here, with the help of the BMW app, which of course you're connected to, if it's your car, you can upload photos. Yes, continue on your phone. Is the phone lying somewhere in here mine? It really does not. So I've actually already seen it a bit earlier. You simply open up the app, then select a specific picture, for instance, of Chloe. That was her exact name, right? The mistress. Since you're on the move now, you can go like, now no one's watching, now you can set your Chloe as the wallpaper, and then it appears right here instantly, yeah? So uploading pictures, kind of like these technological gimmicks that many might miss. Connect your feed. That way you can do all those social media things. Third-party providers are key here, meaning you can integrate Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, but exactly how that'll be done, BMW couldn't say yet. I specifically asked, will these be particular apps? Or are we talking about mirroring from the phone? Honestly, I find mirroring kind of better because there you see exactly what's happening on your phone. So stories like these, for instance, posts, followers, you see everything here. Speaking of followers, if you still haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. 1.2 million viewers and not exactly as many subscribers. That truly needs to change now. And then you have the option here to do the following. You'll hear it now through the microphone. You can play, as the Americans say, the role of Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer, yes, Hans Zimmer, the Hollywood composer, who's also responsible for that driving sound in BMW models. And you know, we have now informed him clearly. Hans, it's absolutely game over. You see, we simply don't need you anymore because from now on, the driver will create his own unique sound. Like back then with the Nokia 3210, which thrilled me at 14. And you had the amazing ability to actually compose your very own ringtones, those polyphonic ones. Just think about how cool that really was. That is now also entirely possible with vehicles today too. You can choose agile, calm, free, or even expressive. For instance, you might say, I desire something more expressive, and with a decisive, firm stomp on the accelerator, you can then precisely shape and define its intensity to put it in another way. Or you say, I want calm. You don't have to go clockwise, you can just shoot straight across. It's definitely much more relaxed. Sort of feels like a mission to Mars. When that guy walks in, I don't want to spoil the movie, and then there's this alien that explains everything, how it all happened. You have to watch it, the movie. Not exactly brand new, but awesome film. And it all kind of reminds you of like an alien attack. But cool feature. I don't want to use it now. Anyway, I find these driving sounds silly. I use it in 2 cars. So for BMW, it also sounds good, but I actually use it in 2 cars. For the Porsche Taycan Turbo S and the EQS Brabus, because this EQS AMG, the sound through the Sport Plus mode sounds really awesome, but it's not well executed. With such a car, it's not necessarily needed. But you actually can do it, you know? So these are indeed the very essence of simplicity. It's the one that moves into this car. Buttons reduced, menu structure simplified, and it fits this car very well. Yet I can still use it without being annoyed or frustrated in any significant way. Here too, very nice material, rough. Then here again, probably a bit of faux leather. Up here, then again, this carpeting, and then these seats. They probably won't come like this because they would fall apart very quickly. But nice idea. Large glass panoramic roof. Now let's have a look at how I sit behind myself, and then we'll come to the conclusion about what I think of all this. So if you ever want to go, check out this floating console. Looks totally alien-like too. You can stretch your leg out and make yourself comfortable. You have like 2. Hip cushions, much like in the Mercedes EQS, for instance, or in the E7, I believe, actually. Yes, Movinus, long, tall roofline. Me, with my old 88, can't even come close. You just have to wait and see what makes it to production. But I've got a pretty great shoe garage here, as you can see. My shoes, which I'm wearing for the first time today, fit really well under here. So, under the front seat in the end. But you have to check if it actually works out that way. Couch-like indeed? Yes, that's our exciting future. Like it or not, I wonder. It's up to you. Let's conclude. Yes, nice, right? If your car looks just like your grandma's couch, with lots of pillows and stuff. What is your opinion on this? You know, I must admit, reducing the number of buttons isn't really my preference. For me, indeed, a button consistently represents a unique way to feel deeply about something, to really experience something profoundly. Just like I don't buy a retractable TV from the floor for that reason, which of course is really cool and technologically impressive to demonstrate. And you can avoid your kids, just like my boys, throwing something at the TV because they can't, because it's retracted, but I don't have such a thing. Instead, a big TV, because for me, it's still a piece of furniture. In an apartment, in a house, when you enter, even if the TV is turned off, and of course that applies to buttons too. I also like the Tesla Model 3 Highland, even without its buttons. Buttons, the iX model, and a series of Swarovski crystals artfully embellishing the door, presenting an incredibly elegant and luxuriously designed accessory feature. And also the big crystal in the middle. I think that's really cool. I can live with that because I think I gradually have to learn to live with it. I find this particular parallelogram from our navigation system in its given order quite good. I found that BMW has really managed to do something significant here, even though they actually had their hands tied. Because what else can you do but smack a display in the middle and ditch the buttons? Every car looks the same then. But with this parallelogram, which isn't even one, somehow by cutting off a corner at the top, it ends up looking different again. So they definitely should make sure they can keep those guys in the design department, and the ladies who also handle the interior design perhaps take a look at their salaries to ensure they can still retain them. Because at the moment, I think it's going well. From my perspective, in terms of design and what they're creating on the ground, because the i7 is nearly as efficient as the EQS, which is smooth all around. The i7, yes, indeed, has like an entire spacious apartment under the hood for some people, which isn't used, yet it's still remarkably efficient. So, fantastic. It's coming in 2025. Last year, that would have seemed far off. Not so much this year. Whether it's the end of the year, mid-year, I'd guess more towards the end. But it's not far off now, and there I really believe the strategy implemented is quite good indeed. Less is more. And with that, I'd like to say goodbye. And I will not say anything more. Goodbye.